Hello, Ice Cubes. Welcome back to the reading of Abandon My Eulogy. We'll be reading Chapter 4 today. But before we read Chapter 4, I would like to give a huge thank you to ryanishyperfixating on Tumblr. He did an amazing job with this thumbnail. It looks so good. I'm so excited to share, what he did with you all. Anyways, sorry it's taken so long to get chapter 4 out. A lot of things have happened between chapter 3 and recording chapter 4. Without further ado, let's get into reading Abandon My Eulogy by Miss E on AO3. All links are in the description below. Chapter 4, in which Ford didn't get his ass beat for running his mouth as a kid, and it shows. The lab's silence is only broken by the whirring of the air conditioner's fans. One soft, continuous droning noise that sucks away any life between the walls. Only the space breathes, a displacement of the air as it is sucked through the ventilation system, breathing back into the room like an exhale. To say that it is cold in the basement level is an understatement. It's freezing. The kind of cold that pricks at your skin, at your nose. That's the point. That was the point of putting Stanley down here at all. But Stanford still feels a line of sweat bead at the back of his neck and disappear down his back. The monster on the table is staring at him, unblinking. It's Bill. Ford knows it's Bill, but the body he's in is Stanley, and Stanford is lost in his instincts. Part of his mind is screaming, distantly, screaming at him to flee, to shut the door and lock it and never come back, and the other half, the part that cried every night during those last few months of high school and still has to fight the urge to buy two of everything fails, stalls, and roots Stanford's feet to the floor. The body on the table does something with its mouth. It takes a moment for it to even register to Ford through the haze of fear. It's supposed to be a smile, Ford thinks, distantly analytical. The jaw hangs down, popped open, and the skin is pulled, slowly, peeled back to expose teeth. It's wide enough that even from the doorway, Stanford can see gums from where Stanley has lost a few of his upper teeth. The eyes are the worst part. They shine, glow, bright enough that the circle of the eyeball shines through the waxy, almost translucent skin of the face. It's like shining a flashlight through your fingers, only the glow isn't red, like light through the blood in your hand. It's yellow, like a disease. They are the two brightest spots of light in the dim lab. Every bit of lethargy in Stanford's body is gone. He feels himself tense like a bowstring, so tense his ribcage feels squeezed in pure fear, like a rabbit caught in a trap, like he knows that there are monstrous jaws lingering just above his head, waiting to strike. Bill cocks his head like a bird. It's fast, too fast for a human to do without hurting their neck, and the movement pulls at the skin of Stanley's throat. The bolt in his neck jolts just a little, and Ford's eyes are drawn to the movement. The slits in yellow eyes carved downward, where they'd been staring straight ahead, now they follow Ford's look. The eyebrows on its face raise, as if it's just now noticing something. The hand in the body's lap twitches and rises. From the doorway, Ford can only watch in mute horror as the fingers, locked in place by death, one by one pop and extend again. They curl around the shaft of the arrow. Ford knows what's going to happen just before it does. The fingers tighten and yank, and the crossbow bolt jerks out of Stanley's neck with a rip. The arrowhead catches on dead flesh and pulls, taking a strip of skin with it. Ford cannot make a single sound as the arrow is pulled away, tearing Stanley's neck as it goes. He gets a perfect view of torn skin, exposed muscles and sinew. There is a ribbon of throat dangling from the arrowhead, a chunk taken out along with the bolt. The body twitches, contracting inwards, and it begins to make noise. An inhale, loud and grating through the hole in its throat, wheezes across the lab. The inhale turns into a sound Ford knows well from his own nightmares, a loud, high-pitched laugh. "Hiya, Sixer," Bill Cipher says, grinning like tearing effectively his own throat out was nothing. He inhales again, through the nose, and Ford can hear the air whistling down his throat, through his throat, as he sniffs. "I just love the smell of a good rotting corpse for breakfast, don't you?" "Bill Cipher," Ford says when he finds his voice, with as much hatred as he can muster. It's quite a bit, considering his legs are turning wooden where he stands, and he's not sure he can breathe properly. Fordsy! Bill retorts, and he turns, swinging his legs over the side of the table and spreading Stanley's, arms wide. He's still holding the arrow between his fingers in one hand, and Ford tracks it with his eyes. It's been so long, too long. Get out of my brother's body. No can do, IQ, Bill says. There's something wrong with his mouth. His words are too fast for it, the speech tripping up in a mouth not meant to speak again, and it lags behind, like the audio is just a second too fast in an old movie. It's off, and Ford only notices because he cannot look away. You see, I got a whole bunch of party people on the other side of that portal waiting on you. Ford feels himself bristling. He stomps further into the room, livid, but stops before he gets too close. His next words are easier to spit out. Never. You'll destroy us all. Bill's face melts downward into an exaggerated pout. The expression is soiled by the wide, unblinking, glowing eyes, and by the fact that it's his brother's face he's wearing. Oh, don't be like that. He waves his hand dismissively, but it flops about on the wrist like he's lost control of the hand completely. He drops the crossbow bolt to the table, and it lands with a clatter. You know, you'll still have a seat at the table. After all, you built the thing. Ford takes a breath to snap back, but Bill follows with a jerky movement. He hops down from the table, a move that is normally smooth to anyone used to their body, but Bill makes it look more like a collapse. Ford has to stop himself from rushing forward to support, to help. It's not your brother anymore. As Bill straightens up, taking a step, the difference is jarring. He walks completely differently than Stan ever did. Stan walks with a swagger, head held high, the confidence of someone sure in their steps, of who they are, grounded and steady. Bill Cipher, currently inhabiting the body of Stanley Pines, walks like he's on the deck of a swaying ship, trying to take control of the tossing vessel. He moves like he's wading through oil, stuck in a motion before sliding to the next. There's no pattern, and it reminds Ford of sick animals. Deer running in circles, brainless and unafraid from an infection in the head. Rabid wolves attacking humans because they can't catch anything else. Like a guilty man's walk to the gallows just after dawn. I've been watching you, Fordsy, Bill says, and when Ford steps back, Bill follows. I've seen what you're up to. Nice shot, by the way. Ford flinches. Bill grins. I know you're running out of time with your brother and all, but me and my pals are getting antsy. It's bait. Ford knows it's bait. All of this is a distraction, a taunt. He knows it. He's better than Bill's games. He's smarter. What do you mean? Ford asks coldly. Bill looks up from where he'd been looking at Stan's nails. They're still pale and gray, because Stanley was dead and unmoving a minute ago. Bill hums, uninterested. Running out of time, Ford says, agitated. What do you mean by that? Bill looks back up at him, and his glowing eyes are wide and pitying. Ford hates him for it. Oh, you mean you don't know? Ford hates this game, this play to seem helpful and concerned, to make Ford feel stupid. It's worked before, and it's working now. Don't know what? He growls out. All fiber here, Bill says, wiggling Stanley's fingers like they're a novelty. 1, 2, 3, 4 digits wave in front of Ford's face. It's been so long since Ford has seen another person's hands that it looks wrong. 5 fingers. Won't have a soul sticking around here for much longer, Bill continues as a shiver runs down Ford's back, even if you manage to fix up his meat bag before it rots anymore. Ford feels himself go cold. He feels himself stagger slightly under the weight of Bill's words. He feels himself take the bait, hook, line, and sinker. It's only been a day, he snaps. His hands tremble at his sides. I'll fix it before it's too late. Bill is circling him now, like a predator. Ford turns his body with him, not willing to show his back to danger, even if the danger is in Stanley's body. Together they turn like a dance, like the final standoff between a cornered rabbit and a fox. Humans are fragile, Bill says, scolding, like he's reminding Ford of the fact. His words are a shock. Ford has never known Bill to say human. It's always meat bag, or flesh puppet, or one brilliant mind a century. Bill stops in his slow circling and goes in for the kill. His next words are quiet, but sharp like steel, like a knife between the ribs that leaves Ford gasping. He's rotten from the inside, you know, he says, and he bores into Ford's eyes with his own glowing ones. I can feel it, and Ford knows it's the truth. Ford swallows back the bile in his throat. He's scared, terrified, and he can't stop looking between Bill's rattlesnake eyes and Stanley's torn-out throat. There's blood, but it doesn't spill like it did before. Instead, it oozes like slick syrup, sliding down with gravity to the floor. Heavy drops of it tick against the ground at Bill's feet. "What are you saying? Why are you telling me this?" he grits out. The awful grin is back. Bill is close enough that Ford can actually hear the skin of Stanley's face stretch into the sickening smile. "I've got an offer for you, Ford Z. An addition to our deal." Ford pulls away like he's touched a live wire, his fears replaced, washed away by anger. "Our deal?" he bristles incredulously. "You think I'm stupid enough to what? To believe you?" "Again?" He doesn't say. Ford has a feeling Cypher hears the last part anyway. Bill just watches him and doesn't react for a moment. The gaze is scrutinizing, like he's letting Ford get his anger out before he says anything else. The expression is off, just slightly. One side of his face holds higher than the other, something that never happened with Stanley's face. It's like Bill hasn't gotten the hang of all the muscles there yet, like some are still slack in death. When he speaks, it's completely calm. "I could bring him back." Bill says it like he's laying down a royal flush in a stacked game of poker. He says it like it's another bucket of water in a cracking dam, the final nail in a coffin, the last lifeboat casting off from a sinking ship. Bill says those words like he's seen the outcome of them 1,000 times. Maybe he has. Ford takes a small, devastated breath. "One little mistake and BAM!" Bill swings his arms out wide like a performer. The sideshow grin is lessened. It's more concerned, understanding now. "Death! It's off to the afterlife. No more of anything." He leans into Ford's space, not touching, but threatening to. "But I can change that." "Can you?" Ford whispers. Bill smiles. It's the worst smile Ford has ever seen. Not because it's Bill, not because its stretched skin is turning upwards, making its way over Stanley's dead face, but because this smile is gentle. This smile is trying to be comforting. "Of course," Bill says like he's consoling a small child. "It's easy. You fluff the body up a bit, plug all its fatal wounds up." Here he makes a motion like he's sewing up a toddler's teddy bear, like bringing Stanford's brother back to life is little more than a sweet gesture. "And power it back up, and presto, all fixed." Ford feels small where he stands. His hands still tremble at his sides, and he feels a coldness to his bones that has nothing to do with the chill in the lab. "This is a trick," Stanford says, almost meekly. "A cheap trick." "You really think I can't do it?" Bill asks, and he holds a hand up to his chest, offended. Stanley's 5 fingers are splayed just under his torn-out throat, and his fingertips sink slightly into the ooze of the congealed blood that's sliding down his front. "I swear I can. Pinky promise." He holds out a finger obligingly. When Stanford was a child, his mother took him to the doctor to do tests on his genetic abnormality. They tested his ability to use his hands, if each finger worked just as well as the rest. Ford was asked to stick out his extra fingers on either side and hold them out for an extended period, to test mobility. He hated it. He hated the entire process, really. Doctors and nurses all looking at his hands, poking and prodding and asking him questions. He despised the attention, the small jokes with harmless intent. This last test, keeping his littlest finger extended just to see if it was functioning correctly, was the worst. Every person in the room looking at him, looking at what made him different. When Ford sat there on that doctor's office bench, holding his hands out for everyone to see, his eyes drifted to his brother. Stanley, sitting across the room, had lifted his hands like Stanford was asked to, and lifted his pinkies as well. There was no real reason. No one had told him to. No doctor was looking at his hands with an analytical, judgmental expression. But there Stanley was, little fingers extended, and Stanford felt less alone in the world than he ever had. Ford glares. He doesn't say a thing. Bill sighs condescendingly and retracts his hand. He begins to circle Ford again, and the dance continues. "I don't know why you're so stubborn about this. I am trying to help you." "You're trying to trick me," Ford retorts angrily. "You'll bring him back as a ghoul, or a zombie, or a monster?" Bill asks. He's completed his circuit around Stanford now, like he's closing in. The showman grins back, albeit subdued. "A monster," Ford snaps, and when he says it, stares into Bill's eyes. "Get out of my brother's body." I'd love to, Bill says, like he didn't make a choice to wear Stanley's corpse like a coat. This body may be cushier than the last one I used. He gives Ford a look and wiggles his eyebrows. But it is a decaying one, and it's rather unpleasant. Ford's first instinct is to defend, but Bill silences him with a hand. Stanford hates that when Bill lifts his hand, he actually does go quiet, like he was trained to. He's running out of time, smart guy, so let's make this quick. Bill extends his hand again, this time in a handshake. Ford steps back instinctively. You'll get everything you want, Stanford, Bill says quietly. Money, fame, power, even your brother back. Dimly, Stanley's hand starts to glow blue. All you have to do is open the portal. Ford stares at the outstretched hand. If he doesn't look at anything else, he can convince himself that it's Stanley's. He squeezes his eyes tight and breathes. It can be done? He asks in a whisper. You can bring him back, Stanley, whole and alive, not a monster or anything else? Bill's voice is downright warm. It can be done. And hey, he leans in again over his own hand. All Ford can see are yellow eyes in his brother's face. I'll even throw in something extra to sweeten the deal. He's too close to Ford's face when he says in a whisper that is far too loud, I can even change him around. Just a little, Bill giggles and continues. Flip a couple of internal switches. This time around he'll be a little less stubborn, a little less clingy, a little less, the smile drops, just a little, and no longer reaches Bill's eyes. Suffocating. Ford blinks, stunned. Bill draws back, his hand still extended. He wiggles Stanley's 5 fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What do you say? Stanford stares at the extended hand. The tips of the finger are discolored from stagnant blood in its veins. The hand doesn't shake, doesn't tremble, but it also does move. It hangs in the air completely still, unnaturally still, as if frozen in time. Ford drags his gaze up the arm, extended into the short sleeve of a worn, tattered, and stained white t-shirt, glazed in the reds and browns of Stanley's blood. His eyes trace up the wound, the fatal wound, the gore of the exposed throat that drips, up the face, past the strong jawline they'd both gotten from their father, to the smile painted on, to the twin lights glowing from Stan's sunken eye sockets. Stanford thinks about the beach. He thinks about warm sand under his knees as he and Stan built sand castles and plans for sailing. He thinks about the creaking of wood of his bunk bed as he and Stan settled in for the night. He thinks about laughter, about angry tirades and crinkling paper in his hands. He thinks about bullies, about school desks getting smaller each year, about sharing everything he had all his life until he couldn't stand it anymore. He thinks about the feeling of curtains under his fingers, about sliding them shut. Ford looks Bill straight in the eyes. Technically, they are Stanley's eyes, sitting in Stanley's eye sockets, washed out in a bright yellow with matching black slits slashed down the center. They don't move. They don't blink. Stanford straightens up, looking his brother in the face. He can only see the eyes of a conman, a maker of faulty deals, a demon, a betrayer. Go to hell, he spits. There is a beat of absolute calm. Stanford knows the term, the calm before the storm, well. While it's not a technical nautical term, it relates to a real-life phenomenon that sailors have documented. Ford studied them once upon a time, when his plans for the future revolved around a boat, the sea, and his brother. He remembers reading a passage of a library book out loud to Stanley late at night, describing what actually happens before a storm, what signs to watch for, a lull in the waves, a stillness in the air. All of the wind drops out of your sails and the sea is calm. That is when the rain begins to brew and the thunder starts to boom. In this moment, in this calm before the storm, the only sounds are the constant droning breeze of air from the ventilation system down in the lab. Bill Cipher, inhabiting the body of Stanley Pines, takes a singular step backwards, as if he was struck across the face. He's offended, eyes wide and confused, almost, and he blinks for the first time, just once, like a dazed puppy. Then Bill's face twists. It's a horrid, ugly expression that sears itself across his face. His mouth jumps into a sneer, his eyes narrow and flash with anger. Stanley has never looked at Ford with such an expression, a look of total eclipsing hatred. It's that fact Ford holds on to when Bill moves. Bill strikes like a fish. He's completely still one moment, and then next he's moving, like a trout or alligator gar after a bug, like a catfish to a worm, fast, with no warning Ford can discern. In a flash, a thick-fingered hand is wrapped around Stanford's throat. It hurts like a punch, and Ford chokes, already out of air. He grabs the offending limb with both hands, 12 fingers grasping at taut, waxy skin. He claws at it, feels his nails catching on a cold, hardened wrist, and Ford's eyes water when the hand tightens even more. Ford's legs bend involuntary, his whole body surprised at the snap, at the grip, at the lack of air. Bill watches him struggle, watches Ford try and pry off his fingers, watches him gasp. You know, he starts conversationally, like he isn't holding up a good portion of Ford's body weight with one hand around his neck. I tried to do this the easy way, with a solid offer, 'cause I liked you, and I liked working with you. He pulls Ford's face closer and tightens his grip until he makes a pain sound. I thought you'd make a good overlord, one of the gang, but you're so hung up on this saving the world and my brother thing. Bill turns and drags Ford with him. Stanford has no choice but to follow. He tries to dig his heels in, to lever himself out of the bruising grip, but his muddy and snow-covered boots squeak and slide against the lab's tiled floor. So fine, have it your way. And Bill braces himself with one foot and swings Ford around. His feet squeaking against the floor as he stumbles and loses his balance. Ford catches a glimpse of Bill's terrible smirk, and then the world goes fuzzy and upside down as Bill slams Ford onto the metal table his body was resting on minutes ago. If there was any air left in Ford's body, it's gone now. His ears ring from the impact, from the blood pumping in his ears. It takes a moment for him to come back to himself, enough to realize that Bill is cackling, a high-pitched, awful sound. The end of each laugh is punctuated by a wheeze, and from this close, Ford can see bits of Stanley's torn throat move. This body may be a little banged up, but it'll do the job, Bill says, grinning. His eyes glow with a wild brightness. The portal is turning on one way or another. He presses down harder as Ford kicks out. It's just a shame you won't be here to see it. Ford struggles, pinned with the metal of the table digging into his back. He can feel the arrow discarded there, and knows the bloodied arrowhead is making a red smear on his coat. He twists, aims for Bill's knees, and kicks as hard as he can. The heel of his boot connects, and there's a crunch. Bill doesn't even stagger. He makes a small, punched-out noise and brings his other hand down to grip Ford's neck. Ford can't breathe. He can't feel his tongue bunch up in his mouth as he struggles, claws at the hands around his throat. I still don't understand something, Fordsy. Why you're so hung up on this brother thing. Ford lets go of Bill's wrists and flails, scrabbling around him for something, anything to grab, anything to reach. His vision is starting to go. After all, Bill's smile takes up all of Stanley's face now, and it's inhuman how many teeth it shows. It hurts, and it hurts because it's still Stanley's face. For a moment, Ford wonders what Stanley's last view of the world was. If it was Ford, with manic eyes, firing a crossbow. Stanford's struggles are getting weaker. Ford's eyes start to unfocus, and his reaching hands lose their frantic motions. His eyelids flutter and start to drop. Bill loosens his grip. Ford has a single moment to heave in a gasp, and it tightens again. A single gust of air, and the world snaps back into focus, black spots dotting his vision. Bill is watching him, like a snake strangles a mouse, like a schoolboy burning ants with cruel eyes. Bill has to have the last word, and he loves to hear himself talk. After all, he repeats, all Stanley was his whole life was a dumber, sweatier version of you. Ford's world dims, his eyes refocus straight on Bill, and his fingertips skate and catch on blemished, scuffed metal. The procedure cart, next to the table, second shelf. Stanley's brass knuckles. Ford can feel his head throb, pressure building up under his skin. He still can't breathe, but it doesn't matter anymore. His world is turning a slow, melting shade of red. A wash of white, hot, fiery rage sweeps through him. His fingers slip into the brass knuckles rings. Ford chokes out a sound. He can't get any words, but he needs to say it. Has to. Bill's eyes get wide, excited, like he's been waiting for Ford to beg. What was that? He asks, delighted. He leans in. Bill never sees it coming. Ford slams his fist into the side of his jaw, hard. In the same moment that the brass knuckles crack into his skull, Bill completely lets go. His head snaps harshly to the side, and his shoulders and body follow like a puppet on strings. Ford gasps in a breath, too, as Bill stumbles backward, and the distance between them grows to a couple of feet. Ford knows he only has a moment. He sucks in another breath and scrambles on the second shelf for the other hand to the brass knuckles. He slides them on. They don't fit right. As expected, 4 heavy rings on each side that fit a hand with 5 fingers, so Stanford's extra digit sticks out on one end. Bill has to drop to a knee. When he looks up at Ford, it's with a rage Stanford has never seen. The eyes have gone red, just around the edges. Stanley's jaw is broken. Or dislocated, certainly. Ford can see the teeth, upper and lower, are misaligned. The bottom row hangs just a little, knocked out of place. Ford isn't sure if it was how hard the punch was, or if it was just because Stanley's body was slowly getting more frail as time went on. But either way, the mouth hangs open, twisted, and Ford nearly gags. When Bill speaks, the mouth doesn't move with his words, like a low-budget cartoon or a ventriloquist dummy whose puppeteer has given up. On second thought, he says, like a record is playing from Stanley's broken mouth, I think a quick death is too good for you. I'll keep you around after I've destroyed your world. Bill stands and sways just a bit. Ford has caved in his kneecap with that solid kick, and the bones in his legs don't sit right anymore. I'll rip the skin from this body's face, Bill snarls, and his shoulders hunch, and make you eat it. Bill lunges. Fighting was never something Ford was good at. Boxing was one thing, the one singular thing that Stanley could lord over him, be better at, and Stan never did. Ford could throw a punch, sure, but he was a skinny nerd all his life, and growing up didn't do much to change that other than to bulk up his shoulders. Stanley was the fighter. Stanley was the protector. When Ford was harassed by bullies in school, Stanley was always around the corner waiting to get them with a solid left hook and words so foul it'd make their father blush. Stanley would come home after boxing practice sore and exhausted, but the moment he got up to their bedroom, he'd pull Ford from whatever book he was reading and force him into a stance to teach. Stanley was much kinder than the boys in the boxing ring. He'd hit Ford and Ford would hit him back, obviously, but Stanford always knew Lee was going easy on him. Ford hated it back then. Hated feeling like for once he wasn't good at something, that Stanley was better. He'd brush Stan off or try to get out of feeling that feeling of second best for the first time. There was one thing Stanley used to do, time and again, and it would drive Ford up the wall. If Ford's stance was straightening out of defensive, or his hands came down from where they should be blocking his face, Stan would push the boxing glove into Ford's undefended spot, a tag, and say, Come on, Sticks, you left yourself wide open. The ribbing was always gentle, a reminder, not a punch. Now as Stanley's body is being puppeteered by a demon hell-bent on murdering him, Ford misses those gentle taps. Bill slams into Ford's stomach in a tackle, and they move together, a snarling jumble of limbs, as Bill's momentum slams them both into a control panel. Bill is clawing like a wild animal, blunt fingers with a force that tear at Ford's coat, his lapels and shoulders, trying to get at his neck. Stanford retaliates, his back pressing into buttons, and feels them click down and press from his weight. Ford punches Bill again, this time right between the eyes, but the angle is all wrong. It still makes a horrifying crack noise, but Bill is barely deterred. Gotta give credit where credit is due, Four Eyes, Bill grits out. Ford overpowers him for a moment, pushes him back enough to get a foot in between them and kick, sending Bill backwards into another panel of switches. Something in the lab turns on. You did something right. You called this idiot here, and this is a perfect vessel for me. Ford stalks after him. The only reason I called him here at all, he snarls, was to help me get rid of you. He swings, misses entirely, and swings again with the other hand. This time he lands an armored punch directly to the other side of Bill's jaw. Under the brass knuckles, Ford can feel the hinge of Stanley's jaw buckle, and the bottom row of teeth snap in the opposite direction they'd been hanging. Bill shoves Stanford back, and Ford overbalances, pinwheeling for a moment. And what did you do to him when he did come? Bill asks, syrupy sweet. Ford hesitates. For a moment, all he can see is Stanley, his jaw hanging down broken, his throat torn out, skin and old stagnant blood pulled by gravity, a broken kneecap. Ford's hand is in the air to swing again, brass knuckles gripped in a sweaty palm, but all he can feel is the kickback of a crossbow. He hesitates for too long. Bill lunges again, this time knocking them back into the doorway to the portal room itself. They wrestle there for a moment, in the space between two control panels. Finally figuring out you're the bad guy, eh, Stanford? Bill taunts, and his hand rips at Ford's neck again. Blood drops from Stanley's nose. I'd expect better from the smart twin. Ford feels, rather than hears, his next words. They cling around in his ribcage, red-hot and angry like coals, and he hates Bill, hates him more than ever before, spitting up words stolen from Ford's memory, things he's thought, things he's heard, things he's said about his brother. Leave him alone! Ford gets a foot, a folded leg between them. He plants his muddled boots on Stanley's chest and pushes. He shoves with all his might, with the force of protective fury that boils under Ford's skin. It's not enough for Bill to torture him. The sleepless nights aren't enough. The paranoia isn't enough. The mania, the hysteria, the fear. Bill made the mistake of dragging his brother into his taunts. There's not much space for Bill to go, pinned as they are in the doorway. Ford expects the bang of a body slamming into metal, but he does not expect the scream. There is no beat between the sounds. All at once, the hands grasping at Ford's front go slack, spasming. There is only the scream. Ford's ears ring with it. The scream is like nothing Ford has ever heard, nor hopes to hear again. It comes from the bottom of Stanley, Bill's chest. A loud, high-pitched, grating thing that rips itself out of torn skin and a broken jaw. It's all-encompassing. It sounds like screeching metal, a great oil ship scraping against the rocky seafloor. It sounds like a horse's whinny, like the howl of a dog, like the call of an exotic bird. The sound is inhuman, a different pitch and tone than anything the human mouth can create. Bill is screaming, and it sounds like him. It sounds like Stan. Bill's eyes are wide, not in manic glee or surprise, but in pure, unfiltered pain. Ford watches the yellow glow in Stanley's eyes flicker, like Bill is losing control, like he's losing. He's burning. Ford's foot digs into the rib cage, pressing. The scream continues, and it splinters into two tones, a high-pitched warbling tone and a low grating yell of agony. Ford scrambles backwards, pulls his feet in towards his chest to get away from the sound, from the sight. Bill slumps forward, limbs akimbo and unmoving. He almost melts into the floor of the basement. Flecks of blood dot his chin from screaming. A patch of his back is smoking, and the horrifying, inhuman scream cuts off like a radio twitching channels. It teeters off like broken glass, like grit between teeth. Ford can hear the wound sizzling. Ford detangles himself from the ground and stands. Bill does not get up. With a jolt, Stanford realizes there is light, bright and blue, coming from his right. The portal is activating. Rage still powers through Ford, and he ducks into the portal room to shut it off. There's an emergency shut-off just inside, and Ford hits the switch with more force than necessary. As the meat of his palm hits the lever, the brass knuckles glint in the light. The portal goes from slowly turning on back to dim, and then it shuts off with a whirring thump. The light is sucked from the room, and the entire basement goes dark again, except for two pinpricks of glowing yellow. Bill does not get up. A smell wafts up from him, like burned tar, like cooking meat. It makes Ford gag, clutching his armored hands to his chest. There is a sigil, carved in the control panel. In this moment, Ford does not remember where it's from, but he sees the orange-hot metal of it. Its mirror image is branded into the back of Bill's shoulder. The wound is deep and visceral. Bill's eyes are barely open. "You had the chance," Bill starts and stops. His voice is garbled like Ford's never heard it. "You could have been all-powerful. You could have had everything." Ford says nothing. He pants into the silence. Who would give up everything just to save their dumb sibling? Bill looks up, and Ford can see the cloudiness, the dullness of dead, unseeing brown eyes beginning to return. Ford thinks about the postcard tucked into his jacket. He thinks about the brass knuckles warming in his hands. He thinks about school projects and old shipwrecks and the long drive between New Mexico and Oregon. For the first time in days, weeks, since Ford's world started collapsing around him, since he realized that he trusted someone he shouldn't have, for the first time in a long while, Ford smiles. Stanley would. Bill does not smile, and the rage behind his eyes is tired. "I'll get what I want, sooner or later. I'll be back, and you can't stop me, Sixer." This time, Ford's smile is a vindictive grin. "Don't call me that!" And Stanley's body goes limp, and Bill's cipher is gone.